8 people, 1 house, 1 axe, and a mystery that has gone unsolved for over 100 years. Nestled among the rolling hills and farmland of southwest Iowa sits the quiet town of Villisca. Today, around 2,500 people call it home. But in 1912, this peaceful farming community became the scene of one of the most horrifying mass murders in American history. At the center of the town was Josiah Moore, one of Villisca's most successful businessmen after acquiring a John Deere dealership. He married Sarah Montgomery in 1899, and together they built what appeared to be the perfect life with their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul. No one could have imagined how quickly that life would come to an end. On the evening of June 9, 1912, the Moore family attended a children's program at the local Presbyterian church. Joining them were 2 young sisters, Ina and Lena Stillinger, who had been invited to spend the night after the event. The program ended around 9:30 p.m. The families walked home, settled in for the evening, and went to bed. But someone else was already waiting. Hidden in the darkness, holding an axe. Sometime after midnight, the killer began the attack. He entered the parents' bedroom first. Josiah Moore was murdered in his sleep using the blunt end of the axe instead of the blade, a detail investigators would never fully understand. Sarah Moore was killed moments later. The murderer then moved through the house room by room, murdering each of the Moore children before turning his attention to the Stillinger sisters sleeping in the downstairs guest room. 8 victims, none survived, but what happened next made the crime even more disturbing. After killing everyone, the murderer returned upstairs. He struck Josiah Moore approximately 30 more times, leaving his face completely unrecognizable. The force of the blows was so violent that the axe left deep marks in the walls and even the ceiling. Then, the killer calmly walked through the house. He covered every mirror with clothing. He draped blankets and clothing over the victims. He placed the murder weapon, believed to have come from the Moore family's own shed, near the front door. He washed his hands, prepared himself something to eat, and sometime around 5 a.m., he locked the house and disappeared into the Iowa morning. The following morning, something didn't feel right. The Moore children were known for being punctual, yet no one had seen them preparing for school. Their next-door neighbor became concerned. By 7 a.m., she noticed the family's livestock had not been fed and the animals were growing restless. She knocked. No answer. She looked through every window. Still nothing. Unable to reach the family, she contacted Josiah's business and eventually his brother. When he entered the home, he discovered the Stillinger sisters first. As he pulled back the sheet covering one of them, a lifeless hand fell into view. The metallic smell of blood filled the room. Terrified, he ran outside and yelled for someone to call the town marshal. News spread through Villisca almost instantly. Within hours, nearly 100 people crowded outside the Moore home. Unfortunately, this is where one of the biggest mistakes of the investigation occurred. The sheriff allowed people to walk through the house. Some handled the murder weapon. Others touched furniture, moved evidence. And incredibly, some even chipped off pieces of Josiah Moore's skull as souvenirs. Any chance of preserving the crime scene was essentially lost. It's important to remember, this was 1912. Modern forensic science didn't exist. Fingerprint analysis was rarely used. DNA testing was decades away. And toxicology testing wasn't a standard part of autopsies. Because no one appeared to wake during the murders, investigators wondered whether the victims had somehow been drugged. But there was no reliable way to prove it. Burglary was quickly ruled out after Josiah's wallet, still containing cash, was found untouched. Then investigators uncovered several strange pieces of evidence. In the attic, they found 2 smoked cigarettes. Neither Josiah nor Sarah smoked. Many investigators believed the killer had hidden in the attic, silently watching the family for hours before attacking. The Stillinger sisters' bodies were also different from the others. They had been moved. Ina was found lying face down. Lena's underwear had been removed, and one of her legs had been positioned upward, leaving her exposed. Despite the disturbing scene, investigators found no definitive evidence of sexual assault. Another strange discovery was a kerosene lamp with its chimney removed and the wick turned low, creating just enough light for someone to move through the house without attracting attention from outside. Finally, investigators found part of a keychain inside the home. It didn't belong to anyone in the Moore family. To this day, no one knows who it belonged to. Over the years, investigators considered numerous suspects. One theory pointed toward a former state senator who had previously employed Josiah Moore. Others believed the murders were committed by a traveling serial killer responsible for similar axe murders across the Midwest. Perhaps the most bizarre theory centered around a local minister whose increasingly erratic behavior led some to believe he had been possessed by demons. The accusations divided Villisca for decades. But despite multiple investigations, no one was ever convicted. And the identity of the killer remains unknown. The tragedy didn't end with the 8 murders. Ina and Lena Stillinger's mother was pregnant at the time. The grief became overwhelming. She later suffered a miscarriage. Another life lost because of the events inside that house. The Moore home passed through 7 different owners over the next century. As the years went on, stories of unexplained activity began to surface. Visitors reported hearing children's voices, footsteps in empty rooms, doors opening and closing by themselves, and shadowy figures appearing in photographs. In 2024, ownership of the Villisca Axe murder house transferred to U.S. Ghost Adventures, the company that also owns other infamous haunted locations, including the Lizzie Borden House and the Brick House Inn. Today, visitors can take daytime tours, private investigations, cemetery tours, or even spend the night inside one of America's most infamous crime scenes. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, one thing is certain: the Villisca Axe murder house still holds secrets that no investigation has ever been able to uncover. And after more than a century, the person responsible for murdering 8 innocent people has never been identified. Maybe the house knows the truth.